He drove the same city route every day for 15 years, quiet and punctual, just another face behind the wheel that passengers barely noticed. Until the night a severe storm hit and Flight 447 had to make an emergency landing on the closed highway. What happened next made every passenger realize the man driving their bus wasn't who they thought he was. Welcome to the Human Stories. Before we begin this incredible story of hidden expertise and life-saving experience, tell me in the comments where you're watching from today. And if you believe heroes hide in plain sight, hit that subscribe button. Captain Robert Hayes had been driving bus route 23 for exactly 15 years, 2 months, and 6 days. Not that anyone was counting. Every morning at 5:47 a.m. he'd start his shift from the downtown depot, following the same 42 stops through the suburbs and back. At 68, Robert was the oldest driver in the fleet. Management had offered him retirement 3 times, but he always declined politely. Still got good eyes and steady hands. He'd say with a gentle smile, what they didn't know was why those hands were so steady. The passengers saw him as reliable but unremarkable, a gray-haired man in a company uniform who drove carefully, never rushed, and always helped elderly passengers with their bags. Some called him Grandpa Bus behind his back, not meanly, just familiarity. Mrs. Patterson, who rode to her cleaning job every morning, would always sit behind him. "Morning, Robert," she'd say. He'd nod in the rearview mirror. "Morning, Mrs. P. How's the knee today?" Small talk, comfortable routine. But Robert carried secrets in his steady driving. The way he scanned traffic wasn't casual, it was systematic, practiced. The way he checked mirrors wasn't habit, it was trained awareness. And the way he handled the 40-foot vehicle in heavy traffic showed skills that went far beyond a commercial license. Robert Hayes had another life once. From 1976 to 2004, he was Captain Robert Hayes, United States Air Force. Not just any pilot, he flew C-130 cargo planes into some of the most dangerous airstrips in the world. Afghanistan, Iraq, Somalia, places where landing was never guaranteed. But none of his passengers knew this. His uniform had no military pins. His conversation had no war stories. He was just the bus driver who always got them safely to their destination. That Tuesday started like any other. Robert arrived at the depot, did his pre-trip inspection, and pulled bus 47 out for the morning route. But the weather reports were troubling. A massive storm system moving in faster than predicted. By noon, the winds were picking up. By 3 p.m., the first advisory came through, possible tornado activity. By 5 p.m., when Robert started his evening route, the sky had turned an ominous green-black. 18 passengers were on board for what should have been a routine 40-minute loop. College students heading home, a nurse finishing her shift, a construction worker with mud-caked boots, an elderly couple with grocery bags. "Might get bumpy tonight, folks," Robert announced over the intercom as the first heavy raindrops hit the windshield. His voice was calm, reassuring, "But we'll get everyone home safe." As they reached the highway section of the route, the storm intensified rapidly. Wind gusts rocked the bus. Rain became a wall of water. Robert's hands gripped the wheel with practiced precision, compensating for crosswinds that would have challenged younger drivers. That's when his radio crackled with an emergency broadcast. "All units, be advised, commercial aircraft making emergency landing on Highway 67. Repeat, aircraft emergency landing. All traffic clear the area immediately." Highway 67, the exact road they were on. Robert's military training kicked in instantly. He scanned ahead through the sheets of rain and saw them lights in the sky, too low, too fast. Not landing lights, emergency strobes. "Folks, I need everyone to brace," Robert announced, his voice still calm but carrying new authority. "We've got an aircraft in distress." Through the storm, Robert could see what the passengers couldn't yet comprehend. A commercial airliner, engine struggling, was attempting an emergency landing on the highway ahead. Flight 447. He heard on the emergency frequency his radio had found automatically, muscle memory from decades of military communications. The aircraft was a Boeing 737, visible now through the rain as it descended toward the empty highway. But the highway wasn't empty. Robert's bus was directly in the approach path. "Everyone listen carefully," Robert announced, his voice now carrying the authority of his former rank. "We have an aircraft making an emergency landing ahead of us. I need complete silence and trust." The college kid in the third row started to panic. "What do you mean aircraft? Are we gonna die?" "Son," Robert said, making eye contact in the rearview mirror. "I've been in tighter spots than this. Just trust the process." Robert began calculating wind speed, approach angle, and timing with the precision of someone who'd done similar calculations under enemy fire. The aircraft was descending at approximately 140 knots, fighting crosswinds. Pilot struggling to maintain control. He grabbed his radio and switched to the emergency aviation frequency, something no bus driver should have known how to do. "Aircraft on final approach Highway 67. This is ground mobile. Be advised, I'm clearing your runway now. Wind is gusting from the southwest at approximately 45 knots. You have a clear path in 30 seconds. The radio crackled back. "Ground mobile. How do you know our frequency?" Robert smiled grimly. "Because I used to land planes too, son." What happened next would be talked about in aviation circles for years. Robert Hayes, city bus driver, began executing a precision maneuver that turned his 40-foot passenger vehicle into air traffic control. He accelerated the bus to exactly the right speed to clear the aircraft's touchdown point while calculating the plane's glide path. But more than that, he was creating a safe landing zone. "Folks, I know this is scary," Robert announced, "but that pilot up there is dealing with hydraulic failure and crosswinds. We're going to help him land safely." Mrs. Patterson, who'd ridden with Robert for 5 years, finally spoke up. "Robert, how do you know about airplanes?" "Ma'am, I'll explain after we get that bird on the ground." Robert positioned the bus at precisely the right angle to use its headlights to illuminate the touchdown zone for the struggling aircraft. Through the rain and darkness, the pilot needed visual reference points, and Robert was providing them. The aircraft was now visible to all passengers, massive and loud, fighting the storm as it descended toward the highway. Several passengers screamed, but Robert's voice cut through the panic. "That pilot is dealing with an engine failure and severe weather. But he's good at his job, and we're going to help him succeed. Everyone stay seated and hold on." The plane touched down hard, exactly where Robert had predicted. The pilot managed to keep it centered on the highway, using every inch of skill to bring 150 souls safely to the ground in impossible conditions. As the aircraft rolled to a stop, Robert immediately moved into action that revealed decades of emergency training. Robert parked the bus in a tactical position, protecting the aircraft from any approaching traffic while positioning for emergency evacuation assistance. He opened the bus doors and stepped out into the storm, but he wasn't moving like a 68-year-old bus driver anymore. He moved with military precision, approaching the aircraft to assess the situation. The college kid who'd been panicking was now filming with his phone. "Dude, who is this guy?" Mrs. Patterson was staring in amazement. "I've ridden this bus for 5 years." Robert never mentioned he knew about planes. Through the rain, they watched Robert communicating with the aircraft crew using hand signals that suggested extensive aviation knowledge. He was directing emergency procedures with the confidence of someone who'd done this before. When the aircraft's emergency slides deployed, Robert was there to assist passengers evacuating in the storm. One by one, 150 people slid down into the chaos of wind and rain. And Robert helped organize them, keeping them safe from the aircraft and the weather. "Ma'am, move to the bus," he told each evacuee. "Sir, watch your step. Everyone stay together." A little girl was crying, separated from her parents in the confusion. Robert picked her up gently and carried her to safety, speaking calmly to her in the way someone does when they've comforted children in crisis before. The flight attendant who reached him first stared in amazement. "Sir, are you emergency services? You're handling this like you're trained for aircraft evacuations." Robert helped another passenger to safety before answering, "Mom, I spent 28 years landing planes in worse weather than this. Different uniform. Same job to get everyone home safe." As emergency vehicles arrived, something remarkable happened. The fire chief approached Robert first, not the aircraft crew, not the passengers, but the bus driver who was somehow commanding the entire evacuation scene. "Sir, I'm Chief Morrison. Can you brief me on the situation? Robert quickly and professionally outlined the aircraft's condition, passenger status, and immediate needs with the precision of someone giving a military briefing. The emergency responders realized they weren't dealing with a civilian bystander. How long have you been coordinating this evacuation? The chief asked. Since touchdown, all 150 souls accounted for, no serious injuries, aircraft secure. The bus passengers watched in amazement as their quiet driver conducted emergency operations with professional expertise that seemed impossible for someone who drove city routes. The flight captain, having secured his aircraft, approached Robert with deep gratitude and growing curiosity. Sir, I don't know how to thank you. Your runway guidance and evacuation coordination saved lives tonight. Are you former military? Robert nodded simply. Air Force, transport pilot, flew C-130s for 28 years. C-130s. Where did you serve? Afghanistan, Iraq, Somalia, places where emergency landings were routine. The bus passengers were listening to every word, finally understanding who had been driving them safely to work every day for 15 years. As the immediate emergency settled, Robert returned to his bus to check on his passengers, but now 18 pairs of eyes looked at him completely differently. Robert, Mrs. Patterson said quietly. You never mentioned you were a pilot. Robert sat in the driver's seat, still calm, still humble. Wasn't relevant to getting you folks to work on time. The college student who'd been filming spoke up. Dude, that was incredible. You basically saved 150 people. How are you driving a city bus? Robert considered the question carefully before answering. Son, after 28 years of flying into combat zones, I wanted a job where I could serve people without anyone getting shot at. Bus driving seemed peaceful. An older passenger, a veteran himself, recognized something in Robert's demeanor. Captain, what aircraft did you fly? C-130 Hercules. Cargo transport. We flew supply missions, troop transport, medical evacuation, sometimes into airstrips that weren't exactly controlled by friendly forces. The nurse who rode his route daily finally spoke. The way you handled that emergency. That wasn't luck, was it? Ma'am, in the military we called it train for the worst, hope for routine. Tonight wasn't routine, but the training never goes away. The construction worker with muddy boots laughed with amazement. Man, I've been complaining about your careful driving for 2 years. Now I realize you could probably land this bus on an aircraft carrier. Robert smiled, the first real smile his passengers had seen from him. Well, I never tried that particular maneuver. Over the next hour, as passengers from Flight 447 warmed up in Robert's bus while waiting for alternative transportation, stories began to emerge. The flight captain, David Chen, had 15 years of commercial aviation experience, but admitted that Robert's ground guidance had been crucial for the safe landing. In 20 years of flying, Captain Chen told the gathered group, I've never seen civilian ground support that professional. Your driver didn't just help, he probably saved my aircraft. Robert deflected the praise, as he always had. Captain Chen did the hard part. I just helped with the lights. But the passengers weren't letting it go. They began asking questions about his military service, his aviation experience, his reasons for becoming a bus driver. I served my country for nearly 3 decades, Robert explained. When I retired, I wanted to keep serving, but somewhere peaceful. Driving bus lets me help people get to work, get home to their families. It's still service, just quieter. The elderly couple with grocery bags, Harold and Mary, had ridden Robert's route for 3 years. Mary spoke up. Robert, you always helped me with my bags, always made sure Harold had a safe seat. We thought you were just being kind. I was being kind, Mrs. Mary. That hasn't changed. Harold, a Korean War veteran, understood something others didn't. Son, you weren't just a transport pilot, were you? Some of those missions you mentioned, those were combat zones. Robert nodded quietly. Sometimes cargo included ammunition. Sometimes passengers were wounded soldiers. Sometimes the landing zones were under fire. But the job was always the same: get everyone home safe. By the time alternative transportation arrived for the flight for 147 passengers, word had spread about the bus driver who'd helped coordinate an emergency aircraft landing. Local news crews arrived, followed by aviation officials. Robert tried to avoid detention, but Captain Chen insisted on speaking to reporters about the critical assistance he'd received from ground control, not mentioning initially that ground control had been a city bus driver. "Ladies and gentlemen," Captain Chen addressed the media. "Tonight's successful emergency landing was possible because of exceptional ground coordination from someone with extensive aviation experience." The reporter asked the obvious question, "Can we speak with this ground coordinator?" Robert reluctantly stepped forward, still in his bus driver uniform, still humble, still wanting to avoid the spotlight. "Sir, can you tell us your background?" the reporter asked. 28 years, United States Air Force, transport pilot. Now I drive city bus. Tonight I just helped a fellow pilot who needed some runway guidance." The simplicity of his answer amazed everyone. No dramatics, no heroic language, just facts delivered with quiet professionalism. But the story was becoming clear to everyone watching. For 15 years, one of the most experienced military transport pilots in the country had been quietly driving city routes, getting ordinary people safely to their destinations. As the evening wound down, Robert's passengers began sharing their own stories about their quiet driver who'd turned out to be extraordinary. Mrs. Patterson told reporters, "For 5 years, Robert helped me with my bags, asked about my family, made sure I got to work safely. I never knew he'd been a military pilot, but I always knew he cared about getting us home safe." The college student who'd filmed the emergency shared his video on social media, but his caption focused on something unexpected. "This is my bus driver. For 2 years he's gotten me to school safely every day. Tonight I learned he used to fly military planes into combat zones. But he's still just Robert, still making sure everyone gets home safe." The construction worker added, "I always wondered why Robert drove so carefully, always seemed to know exactly what traffic was doing. Now I realize he was using military training to protect us every single day." Local aviation authorities confirmed that Robert's assistance had been crucial for the safe emergency landing, and his passenger coordination had prevented what could have been a catastrophic situation. But Robert remained focused on what mattered to him. Everyone got home safe tonight. The flight crew, the passengers, the folks on my bus. That's the job. 3 days later, Robert reported for his regular shift on bus route 23. Same time, same route, same humble uniform, but everything had changed. His story had spread across social media and local news. The city had offered him commendations. The airline had offered him a job. Aviation schools wanted him to teach. Robert politely declined everything except the commendation, which he accepted on behalf of all the folks who serve quietly every day. But his passengers were different now. They looked at him with new respect, new appreciation. They understood that their safe daily commutes had been guided by someone with extraordinary experience and skill. Mrs. Patterson still sat behind him every morning, but now their conversation was different. "Morning, Captain Robert," she said. "Just Robert, Mrs. P. Same job, same route, but not the same man we thought we knew." Robert smiled in the rearview mirror. "Ma'am, I've always been the same man. You just know more of the story now." The college kid still rode to school, but now he understood why Robert's driving had always felt different, smoother, more aware, safer than other drivers. "Robert, do you miss flying, son?" "I'm still flying, just closer to the ground now." 6 months later, Robert Hayes still drives bus route 23, still arrives early, still helps passengers with their bags, still gets everyone safely to their destinations. But now his passengers know they're riding with someone extraordinary. They know their daily commutes are guided by steady hands that once navigated military aircraft through combat zones. They know their quiet conversations are with someone who chose peaceful service after a lifetime of dangerous missions. The emergency landing of Flight 447 became a case study in aviation schools, not just for the pilot's skill, but for the critical ground support provided by someone who understood that service takes many forms. Robert never speaks about his military decorations, his combat missions, or the dangers he faced in 28 years of military aviation. When passengers ask, he gives the same answer: that was a different job. This is the job now. But sometimes, in the early morning quiet before the first passengers board, Robert looks out the windshield of Bus 47 and sees not city streets, but runways, not traffic lights, but approach beacons, and he smiles, knowing that whether at 30,000 feet or street level, his mission has always been the same: get everyone home safe. Sometimes the most experienced people choose the simplest jobs. Sometimes combat veterans become bus drivers not because they have to, but because they want to keep serving without anyone getting hurt. And sometimes, when emergency strikes and lives hang in the balance, those quiet skills emerge to save the day. So I ask you, have you ever discovered someone in your daily life who turned out to be extraordinary? Someone whose humble work hid remarkable experience? Share their story in the comments. Because at the Human Stories, we believe the greatest heroes often wear the most ordinary uniforms, drive the most routine routes, and serve quietly until the moment their experience is desperately needed. Subscribe if you believe heroes hide in plain sight. Share if you've met someone who surprised you with their hidden expertise. And remember, next time you ride public transportation, look twice at the driver. They might be much more than they appear.